So that's off. Air conditioner's off. There's the sound. Okay. Welcome back. My name's Donovan Patrick Mahoney, and this is my YouTube channel. And way to go for finding this or even turning this on. So obviously it's May 2nd. In the last week, a whole shitload of stuff has happened in the States. They've totally lost control, it seems like. The black guy got killed, George Floyd, and people are losing their minds. And it's interesting, like, you know, it's kind of, I don't know who I heard talking about this, but like, you know, for the past 3 months, we were already locked up, and I don't want to say locked up, but, you know, everybody was at home isolating. And so there's already this like sensitivity going on in the world, and just mass confusion. Like COVID is on its own, has been, still is. So like, what is going on? You know, we don't know. And, you know, it seems like things are just starting to get back to normal. And then this thing happens and it's not normal. And, it's tragic and it's sad and it's scary. And, you know, for years, my whole life now, I've been seeing, you know, videos from the States of these acts of violence towards black people. And, you know, it's gut-wrenching. At the same time, what I found this week that's been really interesting for me is being really irritated at the hypocrisy of everybody. You know, I don't want to use that statement like a blanket statement, everybody in Canada, but I don't know, there's like some serious racism going on in this country. And, you know, everybody's pointing fingers at Donald Trump, but at the same time, Justin Trudeau is like fucking driving a pipeline through Indigenous land, and in total disregard for those people. There's reserves in the prairies right now where they don't have good water. You know, but I mean, it makes me happy. I don't want to say happy, but like, I think it's good that people are rallying, and becoming aware. But my whole life, I've been experiencing racism, and what's interesting is I didn't know it was racism. So when I was a kid, I was born here in Vancouver, and my mom was a residential school survivor. My dad, I don't know a lot about him, but together they drank, did drugs, medicated their pain, I'm assuming, and I was left alone, like when a child shouldn't be left alone. And I experienced starvation, shelter insecurity, experienced all these things. When my dad died on Christmas Eve in 1979, and I was with him, and a year later my mom killed herself. I ended up getting adopted out of the Indigenous community. You know, I guess I should have started by saying that I'm First Nations. Like, a lot of people don't know that I'm Native. and I know I don't look like I'm Native, but I'm a full status card carrying Native Indian, and that's how I choose to identify. That's the language that I use. And so back to this thing that happened. So when I got adopted out of the Native community into a non-Indigenous community with an intense amount of trauma and culturally a different way of living, I was being told at a really young age that I was bad and I was stupid and I was dumb. And because I was acting up, because my life was a mess, like nothing made any sense to me. So I actually started to do bad things. I started to, I didn't want to be around the people that were saying those things to me. I started running away from home. I started skipping school when I was earliest memory, I was in grade 1, like skipping school, not going to class, not going to school at all. I started shoplifting pretty young, like I think I was, grade 1, grade 2. In the school that I went to, because I was the only Native kid actually at the school that I remember there was one other kid there. His name was Mark. I got in fights every single day. One, I looked like I was tough. Can you imagine, like, I end up becoming a fighter at a young age because I looked like I was tough. That was one of the reasons. The other reason was I didn't look like the other kids. So I was like the brown, like I was super dark when I was young. And so I was getting in fights at an early age. So I just kind of became those things what people were saying. Like they were saying I was a bad kid. I started doing the things that we weren't supposed to do, smoking weed, drinking. So when I started having interactions, like I had a lot of police interaction when I was young, and some of it was legit and some of it wasn't. What I didn't know until like literally a few years ago is that I was experiencing racism. My at the time, my now ex-wife was like 5'3", super beautiful white woman, non-Indigenous woman. I can never imagine her getting hassled, but I'll tell you a story. In 2016, I had just had full reconstructive surgery on my right shoulder. So they had reattached, my bicep was just about fully detached. So they reattached that, did a whole bunch of shit with my rotator cuff and my shoulder. I'd been discharged from hospital, and my then wife and I went to go to Costco. I can't remember right now why I jumped out of the car. Oh, because I was going to see about a parking spot to see if there was somewhere where she could park. So I thought I would jump out and then try to hold the parking spot. Well, there was a police thing happening. They were like busting a shoplifter or something. And I was standing there and I asked the cop, I said, can my wife park here? And he straight up just told me to fuck off. And I just kind of was like, okay, whatever. And then he told me to leave. Like, he was like, get the fuck out of here. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm just waiting for my wife. It went from that to this guy coming on to me. And you got to remember, like, I was in a full sling at the time. And I whipped out my phone and I started to record the altercation that was coming, which I knew was coming. And I knew I wasn't in the wrong for doing anything. He started to use language to escalate the situation, saying that I was being combative and not complying. He asked for my ID. I didn't have ID. All of a sudden, that became such a super big issue. And then it went from that to I was being arrested. He tackled me to the ground, even though I was in a full sling, and I was screaming with him to stop, to tell him that I just had surgery, that he could do damage. The other two cops that were there piled on me. The only thing that fucking saved my life that day was my wife coming running down the street, screaming at the cops to get off her husband, that he had just had surgery. And then all of a sudden it came down. That video, when I uploaded it, went viral. The last time I looked, it had, 35,000 views on it. What the police turned around and did to not take any responsibility for that was they told the media that I was well known to police. They told the media that I was a well-known drug addict and a criminal, that I was a regular problematic type person. So they didn't do anything to acknowledge that they were fully in the wrong. Nothing ever came of that for them, but they wanted to make me look like the bad person for what they had done. I went down the whole, I did the whole thing of trying to find some sort of justice in making a complaint. That's the only thing you can do. Nothing ever happened. That cop that did that to me had done that, is known to do stuff like that. He, apparently he had like choked out an old man above the Woodwards. Like, he's just like a bad person. So, that's only one instance. The other instance I want to tell you about, that this is where it became really super obvious to me that that I was experiencing racism, was in 2018. Yeah, 2018, I was living in Thailand. I came back. It was October, and it was Halloween Day. So I just spent like a whole bunch of time overseas, in the tropics. Like, the weather's different. Like, I was wearing different clothes. It felt nice to be in those clothes. It was super cool to like experience Halloween, to see people dressing up again. And my intention was to go out and take photos on the street and make a submission to the Daily Hive about costumes and stuff like that. So on that particular day, I was over at my friend's house. I helped her move, and I was walking from Knight Street to Fraser. I had a friend at the time that was working at this restaurant called Jethro's. I was walking down, I think it was like 24th, and there's kids and they're dressed up. I was dressed in, I had a North Face, a black North Face jacket on that was Gore-Tex, black pants. I had a pair of Yeezys on, and I had my camera, and my camera was around my neck, like very visible and obvious. It wasn't concealed. I was shooting with a 35 millimeter 1.4, so it's actually quite a large lens. It's not something I can really conceal. Anyways, when things started to go sideways, though, I was actually standing in the middle of the street in this suburban neighborhood, and I was straddling a puddle, and I was taking a picture of the puddle, like a reflection. And I see this cop car coming, and the lights are on, and the siren's on and he's going super slowly. So I look around to see if, you know, like if I'm in the way or anything like that, and then I step off to the side. And he keeps the siren on and the lights on and drives up super slowly, and then asks me, what am I doing? But like, not in a way where you're like actually want to know. He asked me, what are you doing, in a way that suggested that he wanted to fight with me, if that makes any sense. Like, what are you doing? And I remember, you know, like looking down at my camera and looking at him and being like, taking photos of puddles. And he said, all right, he said, I'm going to get you to step off to the side. And I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. What's going on? And he said, I'm going to need to see your license and I need to see a piece of identification. And I'm like, I don't have any. And again, it was like this accusatory language, like, why? Where's your ID? And I'm like, you know, I didn't need it. I'm not going to go walking around with my passport, because actually that was the only piece of ID I had at the time, was a passport. And because I noticed his tone and the expression on his face, I said to him, I said, I can't help but notice that there's an intensity to your voice and an expression on your face that feels like you're attacking me, and I don't know why. When I said that to him, he opened up his door and he hid behind his door and he reached for his gun. He told me to pull everything out of my ear. He said, put your hands in the air. You're now under arrest. And I was like, I told him, I said, I want you to know that I'm really scared right now, and I don't know why you have your hands on your gun. Within about a minute, cops were coming. I should also say that at that moment, I had asked him to look at my camera so I could show him the pictures that I take. I had told him about my social media, to look on my Instagram so he could see what kind of photographer I was. I told him that I was a freelance photographer for the Daily Hive. He wouldn't listen to any of it. So I'm just trying to remember this story. So I'm just kind of gathering my thoughts. But anyways, he ended up asking me to turn around, and I ended up getting put in handcuffs. There was now a police paddy wagon and 2 other cop cars. All of the cops had kind of congregated and were now standing around talking to each other. And I kept telling them, like, about my social media. I kept telling them to look through my photos. And they were actually going to throw me in the paddy wagon and escort me from the neighborhood. And I said to them, I said, you know, as a citizen, as a first person of this country, like, not to mention that I'm West Coast. I'm a West Coast, and I'm Quaggle. Like, I have a right to walk from A to B. They wouldn't look at my social media. They wouldn't look at my thing. In fact, the cop, I remember saying that, like, he didn't know anything about social media. And I told him, I said, I don't believe you, because I've done trainings with, I've seen and done trainings with people on social media sensitivity. Like, it's ridiculous for them to even say that they don't know this. But anyways, I finally ended up managing to talk the cops into uncuffing me and let me walk on my own volition out of the neighborhood because I said I was going to Jethro's. But it wasn't up until that moment that I really realized that, yeah, you know what? This has been happening my whole life, except when it had happened before, because at that time I was doing bad stuff, quote unquote bad stuff. I just thought I was a bad person. And because I've changed my life so much in the past 12 years, like, you know, today I don't do shit that I can't talk about. I'm not a violent person. I don't steal. I don't do crime. I haven't for a long time. I don't sell drugs. Like, so now it's really clear to me that I've experienced this my whole life, but I always just thought they knew when they were jacking me up for no particular reason. I always just thought they knew that I was a bad person, but it wasn't. It's racism, you know? So I wanted to share those stories today because, yeah, it's a bit frustrating to me. You know, like, on one hand, I think it's great that people are doing something. Like, if you call rallying at the art gallery and fucking changing your social media profile to a black thing, doing something. But I don't know. I just wish that more was being done to acknowledge. I wish that Canadians had that same kind of passion to look at what's going on in our own country. That racism and stigmas and all that is very much alive and kicking in this country, and it needs to change. And we can't blame people. Like, blaming and pointing fingers and acting crazy isn't going to change anything. But anyways, it's been a long one. If you stuck with it for this long, I just want to say thanks. And then if you do me a big favor and like this and subscribe if you're not a subscriber, it would help me a great deal to keep doing what I'm doing. And it stokes me, I think, you know, like when people comment and they like, and I know I'm on the right path, and it fires up my mind actually to think of things and talk more. So anyways, thanks for checking me out, and I'll see you tomorrow.